mentor. I actually had the opportunity to work with Dennis, the founder and chief executive of Mobile Mentor for the last few years. And it's interesting, when I said at the beginning that our first mobility conference was run in 2011. So Dennis actually started Mobile Mentor in 2004. So 11 years ago, far before the first iPhone was launched, or probably planned, or iPad was launched or something. So coming from a Nokia networks and background, very early identified the need for the drive for mobility, and that this is actually something that needs to be managed and it needs to be approached in a very holistic way. So the team, with Randall, managing the team here in Australia, and the team internationally as well in New Zealand and other geographies, and have been working with clients for the last decade on really providing mobility as a managed service. So taking all the solutions that are necessary and actually providing it as one touch point. And it's great to see I had the opportunity as well to talk to some of your clients, and it's pretty amazing in some of the groundwork and some of the implementations that you've been involved in. So Randall took over the managing director role here in Australia last year after, I think as well, 10-15 years of experience working for companies like MSC and managing 200, 300 mobility implementations. So it would be great to see, because I have more background on Mobile Mentor from the New Zealand side, it would be great to hear now as well what you're doing on this side of the testament. So please welcome Randall Cameron.
Thanks very much for that. Today I want to run through some disruptive change and some bits and pieces, and before I get going, it's been interesting to sit here this morning and look at numbers. What else would we expect at a conference like this? So I thought I'd take a different approach to my numbers and my percentages. So I went to the oracle of all oracles on the internet to find the absolute truth of where percentages, numbers, market shares and things like that actually come from. And here it is. So everything I talk about today is basically made up. Just putting some context around it for you. I'm going to talk about three key trends in enterprise mobility, which are what are the disruptors that you're going to face, and we've talked about a few disruptions in a few of the other presentations earlier today. What can proximity and context of a mobility device actually provide us with, and some thought-provoking ideas around that. And the last one is, are you ready for your army of apps? A lot of companies have actually deployed a couple of apps, but what happens when we actually scale that up considerably? So on the first one being disruption. Disruption comes in many different shapes and sizes, and if I look at the Xbox 360 Kinect camera here as an example, this is actually a 3D camera. So if you think about a CCTV environment in a retail environment, those devices were $10, $20, $30,000 to actually get installed and what have you. Now for $200 with some software which I stole from a startup company in Melbourne recently, they can actually put these cameras in place and see if someone's frustrated, happy, sad. Watch where the person put their hand into the shelf with the camera mounted down and see which product they took off the shelf. So when Ashley's in Maya, and he's a Maya 1 member, and we know that his partner has a birthday coming up in a couple of weeks, and he's looking a bit frustrated, and he's been dwelling in the women's lingerie section for 10 minutes, we can deploy a team member to help him. So there's some very interesting things that we can actually do now with consumerised-based technology. We talked about the challenges, and Tim mentioned some earlier on around Dropbox and Box and the others. I don't actually see this as being much of a challenge moving forward, and this one's an interesting one where it's now the Uber of file sharing, if you like, where you can rent out your hard drive space. So Dwayne's here from the CBA, and if you're running short on terabytes one day or something, look, I'm happy to rent out some of my storage on my home NAS, which is now achievable by just downloading a piece of software, and they'll actually pay you to rent out your storage space, and your files get saved somewhere. I don't care where they get saved, and they get federated. So how's your enterprise going to deal with that phenomenon? It's not just about, I had them behind the firewall, I now had them over on Box, and I went and talked to them and I decided that they were secure. It's now, they're everywhere. And the third one, which is an interesting one, is I thought I'd disrupt IDC a little bit here today and set up just before I came on stage with my camera pointing at me, and this is now being live broadcast to the internet, and anybody who's been following me on Twitter can actually see this presentation today. Me being able to be a broadcaster now is a single button press app. Twitter with Periscope, Meerkat, which was out of the gate first, is a single app on an iOS device where you press the go button. I was watching a stream the other day with a guy doing a choose your own adventure in New York. So he was actually going down the street in New York, and people were saying, I'd like you to turn left at this intersection, I'd like you to turn right at the next intersection, and what have you. The very interesting thing about disruption is it's all done in portrait mode, not in landscape mode. They're actually embracing the idea that everybody's starting to record stuff in portrait mode anyway. So in the future, perhaps you need to actually get your TVs and probably turn them the other way. Widescreen's a thing of the past. This is all driven from the consumerisation of IT and their ability to actually achieve these outcomes without our involvement as IT leaders in the world. I've got a bunch of really crap prizes here that I'm going to give out. The first one is for this picture here. Who knows what this picture here is about? It was last week in the press in Australia. Nobody? Yeah? Taxi drivers against Uber. That's exactly what it was. Here's a one for you. I'll give a bit of a throw here. It's gone up and hit anybody on the way past. There you go. Taxi drivers in Perth last week went to Parliament, stood there, put up their protest banners and said, Uber's a bad thing. What do you think happened? Uber went up 500%. Successful protest? Not really. Uber actually went on to say, if you'd like to organise another one, we're happy to do some catering. Anytime you want to do this is fantastic news for us. Trying to go against this disruption is clearly not working. So what does mobile disruption look like? I was in a taxi in northern Sydney a few weeks ago, coming back from the northern beaches there, and I hopped in the cab with this guy here. He has 11 screens in front of him. This is disruption. Up the top there, there's 3 Android devices, a little bit hard to see. Actually on the screens, he's got his normal dispatch system. He's got a front-facing video recorder. There's 3 more phones on his dash. Down by the gear stick there is actually an iPad for reading the news. He had 2 4-port USB hubs all wired in, and he had his own phone. While he was doing that, he was speaking in an Asian language with a Bluetooth headset on, teaching someone how to clone a DVD. That was the only pet that I got. He kept going back to clone DVD, clone DVD. So I talked to him about what's that about. He said, well, this one's Uber, this one's GoCatch, this one's InGoGo, this one's my dispatch system, this one's for reading the newspaper. He's been disrupted, but he's actually taken it on and gone, well, that just means I have more screens in my device, in my car. How can I actually tackle that job? Disruption, moving on, is telco disruption. Has anybody heard about Project Fi? So this got announced last week. Project Fi is Google now entering the telco space. What's significant about this is that perhaps in the years to follow, that it won't be Telstra, Optus, AT&T, Orange, or any of those providers that are brand names. It might be Microsoft, Google, Facebook. These people that don't have 5, 10, 20 million subscribers, but have billions of subscribers. So Project Fi rolled out with a $20 plan across 2 networks, 2 4G networks in America. It fails over the Wi-Fi networks, so there's some 200,000 strong, and all of the Starbucks and whatever else, and you get a gig of data. Nothing too amazing there, you can get these plan rates. The interesting part about it being is that if you don't use all your data, they give you a refund. So if you pay $10 and you get 1 gig, $2, so 2 gig equals $20, and you only use 0.7 of it, they give you $3 back at the end of the bill. So they're actually basing it on consumption. And the really interesting part is that data is available in 120 countries worldwide. No roaming charges. A very big disruption on the way. From the brand, the billing model, the globalisation of it, mobile and the brand are actually changing that. Authentication disruption is the next one we'd like to talk about. So obviously over on the far side of the screen there we've got Touch ID from Apple, and they certainly have disrupted how authentication needs to happen on mobile devices. And we're seeing many people starting to deploy mobile device management services now with different authentication methods for different device types. If you turn up with this device, I may only ask you for a 4-digit PIN because you don't have something like Touch ID. But if you do have Touch ID, I may ask you for an 8-digit complex passcode because it won't get in the way. Once you've put that 8-digit passcode in place, when you then get to the next level where I want to access the intranet, you'll probably get free passage. Whereas the other person with a 4-digit PIN may then be challenged with a complex passcode. So depending on the device type you're using, will actually change how you're authenticating. Who knows what the one in the top left is for the next prize? What is it? Rob Rowe waving his hand at the back there. It's not a Fitbit, no. Rob Rowe, what is it?
90.
A 90, a Nini. I've got one actually on here. So we talked about the Internet of Things and stuff like that. You can have one of these, Rob. I won't throw it that far. It's a Canadian company. It's in beta testing right now. And I actually pop it on at the start of the day, and I put my finger on it, and it takes my heart ECG. Everybody has a unique heart ECG, regardless of whether you're working out or whatever. And then it says, "I am me." So I actually now have a Bluetooth low energy zone around me. When I walk up to my PC, guess what happens to my PC? It opens. When I walk away from my PC, it locks. I was talking to a company in Melbourne last week about this and just using this as a bit of a technology thing. And I'm like, I've got a use case for that straight away. We've got guys in trucks, they've got a laptop, they're supposed to be viewing some data, but they have to go and log in, and they normally do that when they're driving. And that's really unsafe. Can we actually use this thing, and can I have 100 tomorrow? Well, hang on, it's a developer edition. It hasn't been released yet. But some interesting disruption there. The NFC ring, picking up an Android phone, having the ring contact the back of it, and you're logged into the device is a very straightforward one. And Microsoft Hello with Windows 10 is actually built on the Kinect technology and the 3D camera technology that you can't actually just get a face and a picture and put it up in front of the camera and you get logged in. It actually has to know that it's you, and it uses its 3D capabilities for that. The password will die. I promise you, you heard it here today, we will get rid of that password eventually. So we need to think about that. Speed disruption, Tim talked about it a little bit earlier in Mobile Lines 1, is really one of the big challenges of enterprise mobility today. So since the dawn of Windows version 1, so about over a 30-year period, depending on how you count them, and you can bring in, can I call it an abortion like Windows ME and other things that kind of happened along the way, there's about 8 of them in 30 years, is about what happened. Who here as an enterprise leader took all of those? Who released Vista on day 1? Nobody. So you probably took every other upgrade path. When we translate that into mobile, we need to move it about a minimum of 4 times as fast. That's if you took every one of the Windows upgrades. If you took every other one, you probably need to move about 8 times as fast. And you don't get to choose when it comes out. It comes out, it arrives. You can't go and get your iPhone 6 and say, can I get it with iOS 7, please? Although I have had many government agencies in particular, actually tried that request with Apple. It's like, no, it comes with iOS 8 only. And then when we put that across the Android world, it actually starts moving at even a higher velocity. So somewhere around 10 times faster, you actually need to move just to keep up with mobile speed disruption. Security disruption. So the normal process then is, I've got these mobile devices, I'm okay, we're on this operating system. What we'll do is we'll dust off stop the installation tool and see if we can lock the bugger down. We'll make sure that nothing's going to get onto this device, and we won't give them any apps. Go give them a BlackBerry if you want to do that. It doesn't have any apps, you don't have to worry about it. You didn't have to worry about that world. So it's probably not going to work for you. The next thing is, let's go and dust off the VPN, put a big fat VPN on it, let's see if we can suck the battery down, make the user experience horrible, make sure we've got lots of passwords to jump through, and then you can get to a back-end resource that's pretty horrible on your mobile device anyway, and you're pinching to zoom and it doesn't really work. So that one doesn't work anyway, and while we're at it, we might as well put some really restrictive profiles in place and make sure that they really hate this device, and maybe it'll go away, and maybe I'll get back to my life before mobile disrupted me. None of it works. If you're thinking about it that way, you're thinking about it wrong. Think mobile, it is different. Adjustment is required. Who knows what this one is? Yep. No? Yep. Who was that?
Yeah, Microsoft Band.
It's a Microsoft Band. It is. What's unique about it? Is the real one. Yeah, day 1 support for Android, Microsoft and iOS. Microsoft have gone on to actually say that their target platform for their Office suite, first is iOS, second is Android, and third is their own platform. That is an adjusted world. That hasn't happened before. We need to play nicely on all platforms. It's not about rolling out a BYD strategy that says you can have any Apple device you want. You need to actually support a wide broadcast. Process disruption. Who knows what this formula equals? Rob Rowe, you can't answer this one. Anybody want to have a crack at this one? It wasn't in your grade 12 schoolbook, yearbook. Old process plus new technology equals expensive old process. If you don't change, it's about the equivalent of turbocharging a snail. It's still a snail. it'll still move at that speed. You will not achieve the outcome that you're looking for. You do need a new process for new technology. So finishing up our disruption section, are you being disrupted or are you disrupting? You need to come to that conclusion yourself as a business. Are you thinking about disrupting yourself? Apple are very, very good at this, in eating their own market, in saying, we'll create a new product that's going to destroy that other product. We need to think about doing that in the business as well. To say, I'm going to destroy this part of the business by doing this. And I need to move forward. Back to the conversations of Uber and the taxi drivers and things like that. We do need to be disruptive. So that's disruption. Next one is around context and mobility and what we actually get from that. So for those of you who have been to a few ID sessions, you may have seen this one from Dennis in previous years. But since the dawn of computing, we've actually just been making things what we call portable. So mobility actually comes at it from the other way, where we actually have a small device that can have a wearable on it. So I've got my Nimi on one hand, I've got my Pebble on the other hand, or an Apple Watch, or whatever it may be. And then I have nearables around me. So I am a beacon, and I've got a beacon up here on stage as well. So when I'm up here on stage, Citrix have got an interesting one going with their GoToMeeting products. Anybody use GoToMeeting? They're working on a beacon-based system with GoToMeeting that when you walk into the room, guess what happens? GoToMeeting starts. No password, no username, no link, sorry, we're trying to get it working, everything else, you just walk in and it starts. How wonderful would that world be? So nearables. And then there's the invisibles. And yes, there's nothing there because they're invisible. And that is what we were talking about just a minute ago with the fabric, the cloth, the ties, the dishwasher, the toaster, everything actually crawling into our lives. And this creates the mobility paradigm. So putting context around mobility and what we see a lot of people do, I've seen lots and lots of forms in my time that people are filling out digitally that they transpose things like name, first name, last name, email address, time, all these sort of things. They're already available. So we have time on a device, we have the location on a device, whether it be via a beacon in an indoor situation or outdoors in a GPS. It has a touch-based interface that can have multiple touch points, so we can sign on the glass and actually know that it's me signing on it. We can scan things like QR codes and NFC tags. We can tell how fast the device is travelling with its velocity. So if you had an OH&S reason that people shouldn't be actually filling out their timesheet while they're travelling at 60 kilometres an hour, we actually implement that into a mobile application. We can go and access things around humidity, temperature, those sort of things. The way the device is orientated and where it actually is an interesting one. There's a hotel chain that have just released a hotel app to tap on the door to get into the access. You actually have to tap it on and then turn it. There's no reason for that. It's just cool. You just get it tap it and then it goes click with an audible piece, and it uses the accelerometer as you would open a door. NFC tags, obviously we can tap on things like on the left there. Microphones, they can listen to us. So how are you using the microphone in a mobile device to enhance your business processes? Has anybody thought about using the microphone as part of it? The camera is an obvious one. So that gives us an enormous amount of context that wasn't available in portability but is available to us in mobility. And we need to make sure that when we move to mobility, we don't simply take our paperwork forms and stick them on an iPad. I see lots and lots of that. It's not the right way to go. We need to think about what are the sensors that we can actually do to make this work faster. So a practical use case for some of this stuff is safety site survey induction stuff that thousands and thousands of people do every single day. If we add a beacon to that process, if we attach a very simple app to it, we have a whole new process for them onboarding. As they walk in, their device goes bing, they swipe across it, they open it up, it says, have you got a hard hat on? They say yes, it fires the camera and takes a selfie of them, and they're done. A whole different process. Perhaps we can ask them a different question every time they arrive. It starts to work through them actually understanding what the OH&S policy actually is, evacuation procedures, so on and so forth. When we walk up to an asset, we should know who I am. I am the inspector that inspects the fire hose, so the app should know that. The app should open automatically when I get there. When I get there, it should be the morning inspection, the afternoon inspection, the fourth inspection, the annual inspection, whatever it may be, should present itself. Where am I? It should know where I am. It should know what I'm standing next to, in this case, a fire truck. So we could have a fire truck with 4 beacons on it, and the application could automatically navigate to all 4 points of the truck as I'm standing in front of it. Asset tagging and lost and found, all of these things here previously weren't really affordable to asset tag and asset track. We had to have power, we had to have a GPS, we had to have a SIM card connection. now attaching a beacon to one of these things, and an app can actually get that to check in. So imagine all of these things which are council assets or something like that and get left on the side of the road, and Trevor decides to borrow one of those because he wants to dig some holes in his backyard, and it's disappeared. Someone can go and mark that as lost. All the ratepayers have actually got that app on their phone because it gives them the services that they want in their local community and events that are going on. And then one day, one of those apps, and I'm at a barbecue at Trevor's place, and my app finds that asset, it's marked as lost. It uses my GPS, my phone, my data connection to dob Trevor in that asset is in his backyard. Very interesting. Large retail examples. Product wayfinding was discussed earlier. I won't go too far into that, but every time I'm in Bunnings, it's a living nightmare to actually find what you're looking for. So if we could help with some product wayfinding there, would be fantastic. I've seen some great stuff in some early betas from one of the large supermarkets of actually where you can walk in the door and it will say Express Shop. And you say yes, and it says the 8 things that you've got in the app already in your shopping cart, you can obtain by going up aisle 4, halfway down 3, and then back down 8, and then to the checkout. Yes, everybody goes, yes. Bring it on. Their conundrum is now I'm not meandering around the store buying the chocolate bars and the everything else that are the impulse purchases. The reverse of that is find a staff member. So I'm in this place and I want to become the beacon. Can I press a button and say, come to me, make myself the beacon? Video assembly overview, when you go to the Flatback Kings and you're looking for, should I actually buy this thing, how hard is this going to be to actually put together, some context, so they don't have to roll through endless streams of content. It's automatically presented to me as I need it. Staff effectiveness, how long were our people at the front, how many people did they serve, where were their movements around the place. Big screen personalisation, has anybody seen Minority Report? It's frightening how correct it is. Tom Cruise is running away from the bad guys, he runs past the Gap and it says, welcome back to the Gap, Tom, how did the jacket fit? You look a bit bigger than usual because they've got an Xbox Connect camera, look at anything maybe you need the next upsize up. It's all achievable today. We can actually, with digital tracking, we can be on Harvey Norman's website, logged in, having a look at a DSLR camera, and then walk into the store, and funnily enough, up on the screen in front of me, it says DSLRs on special on an arrow pointing to them. How did they do that? We can actually take the home experience and the offline browsing experience into the physical world. Crowd management, how long are people standing in line, and dwell management, a simple activity of where is it from, of what I'm standing in front of, that is bananas from Adelaide, they're not going to be from Adelaide, are they from Queensland or are they from imports? And the age-old battle of the people with the tickets at the deli counter, we can obviously do better with just an app on that. Use cases in service is another question point for you. There's 2 apps at the bottom there. Does anybody know? They're both Australians. Anybody know what they are? Sorry? Restaurant. Yeah. So one on the left is called Clip. It's quite successful actually, and it lets you open a bar tab. So if you're within 100 metres of the venue, you can press on go and it'll open a bar tab and it'll just give you a number on your screen, number 42. Then you walk up to the, like you normally give them your credit card and give you a little piece of plastic with a number on it, it's just on an app. And then you walk up to the bar and you say, number 42, and they walk over and they press the clip button and your picture appears. And you're going to go, yep, that's you. And then their marketing is actually quite clever where it says at the end, leave like you own the place. Because all you actually do is you press the close tab button. It's already got your credit card, it pays for it, sends you an email PDF, then pops it out at the bottom and says, do you need a cab to get home? You can share the bar tab with other people. The one next to it is called Pocket Butler, which is another Australian company, where it takes it one step further where you can actually order. So you can order that coffee, that beer or whatever, and you become the beacon and they can bring the product to you, or you can go up to the service counter that you nominate to get that particular product. So some great initiatives going on from Australian businesses there. In a banking environment, welcoming high-value customers, as we know that they enter into the building and having a manager come out and greet them. Auto login as I'm standing in the queue and waiting for the teller, and when I get to the front, they already know it's me, they're already logged into my account. I don't have to hand over a physical item, they don't have to ask for a password or anything like that, because I'm actually standing in front of them and auto logged in. Stadium service, I thought that one earlier on about the one in America was quite interesting, but putting it into context of crowd movements and things like that, if we know where people are, when they are, it's that half-time point where I'd like a boiling hot / frozen in the centre meat pie. Where's the shortest line that I can get that, where I'm going to leave in a minute? Where can I get the shortest exit out of this place? Over into occupational health and safety, probably one of the most popular selfies of all time is that one there, but a practical use for a selfie, and we need to think about that is now available for us to do verification. So is it the best process that we should have? There was the old process that was sign here to say you've got your hard boots on and your hard hat and your earmuffs and what have you, or should you just use the camera? It's geotagged that is from that device. Startup procedures, as that person approaches the vehicle, can we train them on what the correct startup procedure for that is? Or OH&S segmentations. How do we get groups of users to be in the right place at the right time and evacuation procedures and things like that. So it gives you some context and some real use case examples of what people are doing to take the sensors that are available in mobility and bring them to life. The last section I've got today is around the soldiers. So I'd like to start with a definition, and this is something I was at a presentation yesterday in Queensland, that these two words got intermingled and it was driving me nuts, quite frankly, where they were confusing the two. So the definition of our life in mobile world is that the app is the short version, the application is the big version. Has everybody got the mobile banking app on their phone or whatever? It's just a couple of things that you can do. You can't apply for a loan. You know, the application is the thing that lives on the internet with us. So it is a different purpose. Facebook and LinkedIn, as two examples there at the bottom, have actually separated their apps out now. Why wouldn't they just have one? Well, they want the user experience to be fantastic, so they've created three, and you go to each particular one that you need for its purpose. So the heroes. Heroes have been done, and the heroes here, we're talking about banks, airlines, government agencies, telcos, large retailers, supermarkets, and the likes. These generally cost an arm, a leg, and another arm, and another leg to produce, and they are your front brand of your business. And they are a very important part of your business, and you should focus on, if you have a public-facing part, to actually creating your hero app. It should not be, however, confused with the soldier app. What would happen to your business if you went home today and you gathered the team around and said, we're going to do it 100 apps, we're going to do it in 100 days, how are we going to do it, what are we going to do it with, how are we going to support it, so on and so forth. That's the question that you need to think about if we think about that definition before of an app being a business process and an application being the whole thing. How many business processes do you have that need to be mobilised? How many operating systems do they need to be supported on? How many screen size variations do we need to put them on? So the heroes get the glory, as we say in this slide here. And if we take Westpac as an example here, that if I just did a quick search on iOS, Windows, and on Android, we came up with a dozen or so applications that are just in hero land. So already we're starting to get a challenge that we actually need to support 3 platforms, we need to support 3 or 4 apps. And the hero apps actually start to become quite an expensive proposition. We were fortunate enough to be selected by Westpac to build one of their first soldier apps, and their first of many, in fact. And this one was for a brokerage. The first part was around a loan application that was done. Now this typically was done in a 2 to 3 day paper-based process where a broker would come out and see you, say I'd like to get a loan from the bank, and you'd fill out all this paperwork, so on and so forth. We turned that into a 90-second process. It has to go through about 15 different various back-end systems and get approvals and what have you, but a 90-second return approval process. So the person can then go shopping on realestate.com that weekend, get their loan, and unfortunately the other bank has missed out because they're still waiting for that pre-approval cycle. Their time to save was about 30 minutes that they actually that they reported that their brokers were saving, and actually their input by modifying how the paper form process was actually done, using the camera to capture driver's license information and things like that. The client to SLA provider went from 41% to 74% and is still improving, so a remarkable increase there. And there was a significant increase in their market share of lending because these brokers could actually offer other products from other banks. So one bank gave this app to the brokers. The brokers are obviously going to gravitate towards that one if they've got a 30% time saving, which is going to be good for Westpac in this case. So they had a transformation with their first soldier app of a 1 day, 1 week, 1 month ROI on their first investment, which now pays for their next soldier app and their next soldier app and their next soldier app, and we move on. So finishing off this section is, are you ready for enterprise mobile apps? Are you ready to support hundreds of apps? Are you ready to support hundreds of business processes? And have you thought about how they're going to be different to what you're actually doing today, and what are the challenges that you're going to get with that? So that's the three sections of my presentation, which is around disruption, context, and applications. I work for a company called Mobile Mentor. We obviously can partner with you to help with these challenges across the board. And really in mobile, it's really about having someone with a bunch of scars along the way to help you. Watching where not to, which landmines not to step on, what not to do, as well as what other people are doing and what other industries are doing, and how can you leverage those ideas that they're doing to get your outcome that you're looking for. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you as well. And there's a few more prizes to go on here. Can I keep one?
You should.
We've got about a minute left. Any immediate questions? I mean, one question that came up when I was listening to you, and it was fascinating, some of the case studies that you've brought up. With all the gadgets coming out, and you know, it's just, I think it's just the start of it. As I say, you know, tip of the iceberg. It's there's more and more released every week, every day. As a business, how do you make sense of actually bringing it back from the nice new shiny object to actually a business value? So how do you, when you work with clients, like what kind of process do you go to actually make sense? And I won't forget the shiny object, but actually, you know, bring it back to what does it mean to your customers, to your, you know, people internally.
Yeah, I guess, well, it all starts back at you know, understanding the business process to start with is obviously, you know, paramount. And then I think one of the interesting challenges that a lot of businesses face is they know that they don't have the correct business process in place, and automating that business process is obviously going to automate a poor process and not really achieve anything. So you know, we start a lot of our engagements with an understanding of what are the people doing in the field. And if I can draw an example, I guess, of I was part of a project 12 years ago for beer delivery to pubs. So probably one of the most important business processes there is in Australia for Carlton United Breweries in Melbourne. So I need to take beer from here and get it to the pub and know that it actually got there. And they gave us 2 drivers to sit with for the day. And they picked, the union picked one compliant driver, as they called it, and one non-compliant driver that we could go for a ride along with. So we went out to Point Cook about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, to I think it was 6 o'clock to get in the truck and have a ride along. What do you think the non-compliant driver did? He turned up at 5 o'clock and buggered off because he didn't want someone sitting next to him for the day. So we're only able to actually sit with the compliant driver, but understanding his challenges and how he actually filled things out was very interesting, in that we found that he started on page 3 of his paperwork and worked back to page 1. And why do you do that? Well, because it makes more sense that way. So actually getting to the grassroots and actually understanding it is really where it's about. And then it also is about, you know, things like the NIMI heart rate band that I have on today, and last week with a company just throwing an idea out there and them going, I've got a use case for this straight away. And putting those two things together with our experience across many customers and many facets allows us to reach the outcome we're looking for.
Okay, thank you very much. And the team at Mobile Mentor. Any follow-up questions? One quick comment when you mentioned the protest against Uber and everything. And interesting is as well, I'm originally from Germany, and in Germany obviously Uber is banned. And what Uber did is just change the business model. So they're using their drivers for grocery deliveries.
Yeah.
Rather than taxing, so. Yeah,
and I just saw just as I was coming on stage that Uber have just uncovered their next part, which is courier service basically. So, you know, if you don't have a courier's please or a toll account or whatever, you just press the button and say, come and pick this up and take it to there.
It is a nice thing with the new business model, it's so flexible, you can adapt.
Absolutely, and mobility is really what's allowing them to do that.
Thank you very much, Rainer. So,